from the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. The guns fall silent in the Middle East after 2 days of deadly strikes between the United States and Iran as mediating nations like Turkey, Pakistan and Oman attempt to get diplomacy back on track, while an unnamed U.S. official has told the media that technical talks are still ongoing. As tensions remain high, the head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Mohammad Bagher Zorgadar, has vowed to respond to any attack on Iran's infrastructure, warning Israel would not be spared following recent exchanges of the fire with the United States. In a post on X, the Office of the UK's Special Representative for Syria said the United Kingdom welcomed the decision to restore Syria's rights and privileges under the Chemical Weapons Convention, while U.S. Special Presidential Envoy to Syria and Iraq Tom Barak has also congratulated Syria on the same matter. Mali's army has retaken control of the key northern town of Anafis after a nearly week-long battle against rebel fighters. Anafis is about 100 kilometers from the strategic town of Kidal, which was captured by Al-Qaeda-linked militants and Tuareg separatists in April. North Korea's state media has reported that it plans to boost its nuclear force both in quality and quantity, citing a decision from a military commission meeting, as North Korea also announced plans to bolster its spying activities in South Korea. Israeli attacks across southern Lebanon has intensified between Thursday night and Friday morning, with continued air raids, gunfire and demolitions despite a U.S.-brokered ceasefire. Lebanon's media reported an Israeli drone attack hit a pickup truck on the outskirts of Shukin and Kfar Dajjal in the Nabatea district. The United Nations warned that at least 1 million women and girls had lost their access to vital support due to dramatic cuts to foreign aid spending since January 2025. The UN Women's Agency has decried a collapse of women's organization at a time when needs are soaring as US President Donald Trump slashed foreign aid. EU has warned Meta that it must change Facebook and Instagram's addictive design or face a heavy fine. Brussels has accused the US tech giant of failing to limit the risks the platforms pose to users, especially children and the vulnerable adults, because of features designed to keep them on Facebook and Instagram. We start this hour with the breaking news. Anne Widdecombe, the former Conservative cabinet minister and later a spokeswoman for Reform UK, has died at the age of 78. Devon and Cornwall police have launched a murder investigation after she was found with serious injuries at her home in Dartmoor in Devon. Police say the investigation is moving at a significant pace as officers work to establish the circumstances surrounding the death. A major search is underway and detectives are looking for a white male who they believe may be connected to the case. No further details about the suspect has been released at this stage. Forensic teams have been deployed to the property while investigators continue to gather evidence, speak to potential witnesses, and review available information. Police have also appealed to the public for any information that could assist the investigation. Anne Widdecombe was a prominent figure in British politics for decades. She represented the Kent constituency of Maidstone as a Conservative Member of Parliament for 23 years and served in several senior government roles. After leaving the Conservative Party, she became associated with Reform UK and remained an active voice in public life. The news of her death has shocked the political establishment across the United Kingdom. Tributes have begun pouring in from leaders across the political spectrum, reflecting on her long career in public service and her influence on British politics. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has said she was deeply saddened by the news and called on the public to avoid speculation while the police investigation continues. Authorities have assured that every available resource is being used to establish the facts and bring those responsible to justice. Further updates are expected as the investigation processes. Now we have another breaking news coming in from Ukraine. In one of the most highly coordinated and expansive deep strike operations of the war, Ukraine's military has launched a massive drone blitz targeting critical Russian energy infrastructure, spanning from the Baltic coast down to the southern border. Over 300 long-range strike drones simultaneously penetrated deep into Russian airspace, igniting major petroleum processing installations and completely disabling key supply links. According to official briefings from Kyiv, the unmanned systems forces successfully hit a strategic oil processing plant in the northern Leningrad region. Alongside a massive fuel storage facility in the Rostov region, parallel strikes targeted the high-capacity Kurganeftep Product port-in terminal in Taganrog and the major Ilsky refinery in Krasnodar Krai, triggering sprawling blazes that forced the emergency evacuation of surrounding residential communities. These hits directly compound an existing domestic fuel rationing crisis gripping multiple major Russian regions. Simultaneously, a separate wave of maritime aerial drones executed a devastating offensive across the Azov Sea. Ukraine's drone forces commander has confirmed that strike teams successfully hit 10 Russian Shadow Fleet tankers and logistical vessels attempting to transport fuel to the isolated Crimean Peninsula. This extensive simultaneous chokehold on Russia's maritime lanes and refining capabilities marks a major structural escalation in Ukraine's ongoing strategy to starve frontline Russian assets of vital fuel supplies. Now we move on to West Asia. Qatari negotiators have landed in Tehran for emergency talks with top Iranian officials. Iran state-aligned Tasnim news agency has confirmed that the core purpose of the delegation's unannounced visit is to definitively cement Doha's role as the central mediator in the region following the rapid collapse of the Gulf security environment over the last 48 hours. Sources familiar with the situation report that these urgent meetings are being conducted in close, direct coordination with the United States. The Qatar mission is hyper-focused on saving the implementation of the fragile U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding, which has been severely fractured by the consecutive days of tit-for-tat military strikes. While President Donald Trump has officially declared the military ceasefire over, Qatar's emergency presence in Tehran represents a vital final effort to defuse a catastrophic escalation, contain active maritime hostilities, and rebuild the necessary ground conditions for broader bilateral negotiations to survive. Now we welcome Mr. Matthew Adam. He's an author and journalist who joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Adam, for joining us. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi. Now, Mr. Vadam, looking at this, as we know that, Qatari mediators are in Tehran, and we also know that yesterday Iran held conversations with some countries like Oman and Pakistan and Turkey. What do you think can they do, and what do you think they cannot do? The mediators.
I think they cannot stop. The mediators cannot stop the war. If Iran and the United States want to wage war against each other, and they're determined to do so, then the negotiators aren't going to be able to stop them. It will take either Iran or the United States deciding that it doesn't want to continue for whatever reason for things to cool down. So I suspect that will drive these peace talks. But they've had peace talks endlessly since Donald Trump called the first ceasefire after the first round of bombings on February 28th. And, he just keeps calling ceasefires, and they're pointless, and the negotiations are pointless, and they don't accomplish anything. And now the memorandum of understanding has fallen apart. If one side decides they want to stop fighting, then they will stop fighting. And I think the side that is more likely to not have staying power in terms of its commitment to fighting is the American side, unfortunately, because President Trump doesn't, well, he has a short attention span, and he loses interest in projects quickly when they don't go his way. And he has tried to back out of the Iran war several times and has been stuck and unable to do so. But if he decides that the political pressure from, the Strait of Hormuz traffic being disrupted and gasoline prices rising, then he may, and pressure from Congress, which has, approved one war powers resolution, non-binding, of course, requesting that he stop the war, then he may decide, as the elections, the midterm elections in November, in which his party might lose control of Congress, then he might decide that he wants another ceasefire, excuse me, to placate his critics, both among Republicans and Democrats.
Thank you very much.
Peace will happen on its own. I don't think the negotiators are going to drive the conversation.
Thank you very much for sharing that insight. Mr. Vadam, please do stay with us as we'll come back to you. Now, Qatar has renewed its call for diplomacy and dialogue amid efforts to maintain stability in the Middle East. During a phone conversation with Egyptian Foreign Minister Badil Abdelati, Qatari Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani has discussed bilateral cooperation and the latest regional developments. The two sides reviewed joint diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions and strengthen security across the region. Qatar has stressed the need for all parties to honor the United States-Iran Memorandum of Understanding and to continue resolving differences through diplomacy, though has also emphasized the importance of ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, maintaining regional security, and preserving recent diplomatic gains. Qatar has reaffirmed its support for all initiatives aimed at de-escalation and called for a comprehensive agreement to achieve lasting peace and stability in the region. Now we welcome back our guest, Mr. Matthew Vadam. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadam, for staying with us. Now, Mr. Vadam, of course, this time also the trigger was Strait of Hormuz, and last week too, when things escalated to a tit-for-tat situation between U.S. and Iran, it was the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think the focus now or priority now has completely shifted from regime change and nuclear to Strait of Hormuz?
I think the United States still wants to get Iran to agree to stop pursuing a nuclear weapon and for it to actually stop pursuing a nuclear weapon. These are two distinct things. However, the Strait of Hormuz seems to be the most important thing to President Trump at the moment because he ties his party's political future to it. If the strait is closed, then this causes gasoline prices to go up. Excuse me, pardon me. Around the world and in the United States, and this hurts his standing. Excuse me, sneezy day. And this hurts his standing politically in the United States. So I think keeping the Strait of Hormuz open is a thing that's most important to him. The workaround that ships are now using is quite clever. Instead of transiting on the Iranian side of the Strait of Hormuz, they're hugging the shoreline of Oman on the southern side of the Strait of Hormuz, which is, as I understand it, is beyond the reach of Iran, because it's not Iranian territory and it's not, and it's out of range for Iran. So this is a very clever workaround, and surprised it took them this long to figure out, that they could do this. So. Strait of Hormuz traffic is still going to remain uncertain, and it may not be insurable, which is a problem for companies, wanting to send their products, and the companies that actually run the shipping lines. But as long as the strait is open, at least on the Omani side, this is good for the world economy, and it's going to benefit Donald Trump's political party.
Bless you, and thank you very much, Mr. Radom, for sharing that. Please do stay with us as we'll come back to you. Now we move on. A controversial bonfire topped with a replica of a mosque was set alight in Moigashel, Northern Ireland. Before police could remove what they had described as a hate display, the incident has triggered widespread political condemnation and raised concerns about community tensions ahead of the 12th celebrations. The Police Service of Northern Ireland had prepared a major operation involving hundreds of officers to remove the replica from the top of the 20-meter-high bonfire. However, the bonfire was lit before the planned operation could be carried out. Police said they had been engaging with community representatives and had urged the removal of the replica as a part of an investigation into an alleged hate crime. While a 56-year-old man has been charged with incitement to hatred in connection with the incident, authorities are now stepping up engagement with ethnic minority communities across Northern Ireland to provide reassurance and help maintain peace and public safety. Now we move on to U.S. U.S. President Donald Trump has triggered a massive legislative standoff in Washington, abruptly refusing to sign the bipartisan 21st Century Road to Housing Act, despite its overwhelming approval by both chambers of Congress. In a fiery statement, the president has declared the housing package unimportant compared to his administration's signature election reform, Saves America's Act, issuing a strict ultimatum that he will withhold his signature until lawmakers pass the Save America Act. The legislative freeze has caught congressional leaders completely off guard. Just hours before the president canceled the formal Capitol signing ceremony, Republican leaders had publicly praised the bipartisan housing bill as a historic milestone to expand housing supply and slash consumer costs. President Trump, however, has reclassified the Save America Act as a full-scale national emergency, demanding the immediate implementation of strict national voting mandates. The proposed act would enforce universal photo voter identification, mandatory documentary proof of citizenship for all federal elections, and a sweeping prohibition on mail-in ballots, with strict exceptions reserved only for military personnel, the disabled, and documented illnesses or travel. With the legislation currently stalled in the upper chamber, President Trump issued an aggressive warning to congressional Republicans, demanding they terminate the Senate filibuster to bypass Democratic resistance, warning that failure to pass the bill poses a catastrophic threat to the party ahead of the upcoming midterm elections. President Trump has insisted that if Senate leadership fails to force a positive vote, the political consequences will rest entirely on their shoulders. Under constitutional rules, the housing bill will automatically become law after 10 days without a formal veto, but the high-stakes standoff has successfully grounded Washington's legislative agenda to an absolute halt. Now we welcome back our guest, Mr. Matthew Radom. He's an author and journalist who joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Radom, for staying with us. Now, Mr. Radom,
Sure.
if my understanding is correct, I'm thinking that this bill in particular, the housing bill, is very important and it's also backed by Republicans too. Why do you think U.S. President Donald Trump has decided to tie this to his Save America's Act? And is that actually that important? And what more can you say about this?
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if from what I understand, the National Housing Bill is not a good bill. But quite apart from that, it does have overwhelming support in Congress. It passed by veto-proof majorities, and Republicans and Democrats think it is the right way to go forward to reform U.S. housing policy. So they think it's a very important bill. Donald Trump right now is this is a political stunt, him saying that he's not going to sign it, because time limit, the clock on him signing or not signing the bill is about to run out, I think, at midnight, which in my time zone is a little over 12 hours from now. If he doesn't sign it, then under the Constitution, the bill will become law automatically, okay? Like by operation of law, I think lawyers would say. So he could, in the next 12 hours, he could get out his veto pen and veto the bill, and that would send a strong message. Though I'm sure Republicans, and Democrats would not be happy because they support the bill, and then they could vote on it again and override his veto. So it gets a little messy, but Congress has done this with presidents before who have vetoed bills that have lawmakers' overwhelming support. So President Trump here is trying to make a statement because he knows he'll get a lot of publicity by refusing to sign the national housing bill. So he's tying it to the Save America Act, which is overwhelmingly popular among Republicans and bitterly opposed by Democrats who call it in over-the-top rhetoric, an attack on democracy, which I don't think it really is. It insists that voters have to present proof of citizenship in order to register to vote, and that when voting, they actually have to present photo identification in order to cast their ballots. And I think it also curbs, not sure if it outlaws, but it definitely curbs mail-in voting. Mail-in voting is popular among voters who belong to both major political parties. So that aspect of it I don't think is popular. But the Save America Act is very important to Republicans, and they have been trying desperately to get it passed for months. They have run into procedural roadblocks in the Senate. The Senate parliamentarian, the person who makes rulings on procedural matters in the Senate, has said that it cannot be included in the reconciliation package, which is, a way that parties use to get matters through without having to get 60 votes in favor. A lot of vote, if there's opposition to a bill, 60 votes are required to pass it out of the 100 senators. Reconciliation allows it to be passed with just a mere majority, with just 50 votes or 51 votes. Save America Act is much more important politically to President Trump, which is why he's going through this, I guess you call it this performative display to raise consciousness, to draw attention to how important the Save America Act is. He's not a dummy. He knows that that the housing bill is going to become law without his signature. But he wants to use this as an opportunity to educate the American public about how important the Save America Act is. So, I imagine unless he changes his mind, and decides to veto it, I imagine a little over 12 hours from now, the national housing bill is going to become the law of the land, despite President Trump's stated objections to signing it at this time.
We will be eyeing that. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadam. Always great learning from you. Now, if we move on to Asia, China has achieved a major milestone in the global race for space dominance. Chinese state media has confirmed that the country has successfully landed a reusable rocket booster for the first time, marking a historic breakthrough for its aerospace program. The Long March 10B rocket has lifted off from Hainan Island roughly 6 minutes after its upper stage separated to deploy a satellite into orbit. The first stage booster has made a controlled vertical descent, successfully touching down on a floating recovery platform. Footage has been released by state broadcasters shows the booster descending through the clouds before settling onto the platform. Notably, the Long March 10B utilizes a distinct recovery method. Rather than a standard autonomous landing, it employs landing hooks designed to catch a net on the platform. This success is a direct move to challenge the dominance of American firms like SpaceX and Blue Origin. For nearly a decade, Elon Musk's SpaceX has pioneered this technology, with its Falcon 9 boosters now flying over 150 times a year. By mastering the ability to recover and reuse these valuable rocket stages, China aims to drastically slash the costs and turnaround times for satellite launches and deep space missions. The technology is more than just a matter of logistics. It is a pillar of Beijing's ambition to establish itself as a preeminent aerospace power. The market has reacted sharply to the news, with shares in Chinese space firms jumping by the daily limit of 10% shortly after the announcement. While the road to this success has included several failed tests in recent months, today's achievement puts China on a much firmer footing as it races to close the gap with its global rivals. We'll continue to track the impact of this new capability on the international space landscape. Now let's welcome Mr. Art Herman. He's the president at the Coalition of Safe Manned Space Exploration, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Mr. Herman, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, China's Long March 10B uses a unique sea-based net capture recovery system with landing hooks rather than the autonomous landing legs we're used to seeing with SpaceX's Falcon 9s. Since there is already a comparison taking place online from an engineering standpoint, what are the advantages and drawbacks of catching a massive rocket booster in a net out at sea versus having it touch down on its own legs?
Well, if you can capture it as opposed to using their legs, this is what Elon Musk is doing with Starship, and that allows you to save weight because you don't have legs that weigh several tons. So the less weight you have, the more payload you can carry.
Thank you for sharing that. And Mr. Herman, given that China plans to attempt a reflight of this exact booster by the end of this year, what hidden technical hurdles do they face when inspecting and recertifying a rocket that has just survived an orbital launch and a sea recovery?
Well, for certification, it's simply practice. Elon Musk is doing this with his rockets. New Glenn is as well. You test and then you learn. Whether you have failures or successes, you'll learn. And that will give you greater reliability when you're actually going to use it for cargo, or in the case of the future of the Chinese rocket and the future of the American rocket, taking astronauts to the moon and beyond.
Now, China has very ambitious near-term goals, including building their own satellite internet mega constellations and landing astronauts on the moon by 2030. How critical is this specific milestone for their broader deep space timeline? Is this a luxury cost cutter, or is reliable reusability an absolute prerequisite for their lunar and deep space ambitions?
Well, it is a necessity if you want to do it consistently and at a high repeatability rate. So you're not throwing away the rocket, you're reusing it, and this allows you to have more frequent flights and a lot lower costs. Just like the airplane that you fly on, you don't throw it away at each time. You reuse it every day.
Thank you for sharing that. And Mr. Herman, last but not least, with such updates coming in from different space organizations around the world, how do you think the space war will look like in the near future?
Well, there is great competition, and it may get ugly with China. Their ambitions are not peaceful. They're just as we see in the South China Sea, where they're seizing sovereign territories of other countries and international waters. So China's ambitions on the moon could include illegally seizing territory. Now, this is why the free world, including India, does need to work to get onto the moon and into space. And I've been pleased at the progress that India is making towards your own rockets to carry astronauts into space. And I hope that India will become a partner with the U.S. on lunar bases and so forth, and that can help to restrain China's worst instincts.
Yes, that would be exciting. Mr. Harmon, thank you very much for sharing that insight. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.
The world's biggest sporting spectacular is finally here.